Welcome back to the Food and Beverage Leadership Series of LivBytes, where we sit down with founders and leaders in industry to unpack how they're building and scaling their businesses, what's working, what's challenging, and what they're learning along the way. I'm Craig Jonkers, your host, and today I'm joined by Jared Smith, president of Perfect Hydration. Jared has spent over 17 years in the beverage industry and is now leading one of the fastest growing alkaline brands in the country. Jared, welcome to the show.
Hey, Craig, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to talk.
Well, good. For those that don't know your journey, how did you go from merchandising at Campbell Soup to leading one of the nation's largest beverage brands?
It's been a long road. I have been fortunate enough to have the opportunity to kind of work at every level to where I'm at today. And so I've seen many parts of the business, understand a lot of it. And so it allowed me to use that background to really ideate and create a brand from scratch and take it to market and scale it over the last almost nearly decade now.
That's awesome. Well, let's start with Perfect Hydration. Kind of walk us through the company's history. Why alkaline water and the bold launch of your products directly into Costco. That's pretty.
Yeah, it's definitely not traditional. And I remember at the time thinking we were nuts going after one of the largest retailers in the world right out the gate. Typical brands typically like to incubate a little bit more in maybe the natural side, and we skipped ahead of that. Honestly, now that we've kind of gotten to this point, I look back and think that it was really a differentiated path that allowed us to grow and to really focus on finding our consumer and getting trial with the consumer, showing value with the consumer, and earning that trust over the time. And so when we first came up with the brand, it was a group of us under a larger parent company. We knew that we wanted to get into water. It was what, from the manufacturing side, we were most efficient with and knew the business the most, but really didn't have an idea of what we were really getting into when joining the water category on the branded side. I mean, it's very resource intensive. It requires a lot of discipline. It's very easily taken off the track and going in different directions. It's very capital intensive. And so it hasn't been an overnight unicorn or moonshot for us. It's been a slow, methodical build along the way, and definitely have stumbled, but really managed to stay on our feet and continue to push through, barring the fact that we don't have the major marketing dollars that a lot of these other brands that we're competing against have.
Exactly. Well, you first started regionally, I think in California, if I'm not mistaken. Talk to us about that, your regional approach, and then when you went into Costco and that region, I think you mentioned you went 10 miles deep before
Yeah.
expanding nationally. Tell us a little bit about that and kind of what you learned from a discipline and growth strategy.
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, I have a larger parent company that's really kind of funded us across the line with this, and it's unique compared to most starting brands. But we had early relationships with Costco, and so it was one of the first retailers that we had the opportunity to show the brand to, and they gave us a very small rotation, which really proved out very quickly. I mean, we launched the brand in December 2016, and within the first 30 to 60 days, I think we sold over 1 million bottles, and
Wow.
it was kind of like wildfire from there. I mean, we got quick expansion within the Costco Los Angeles region, and from there we chose LA as kind of the home site. And so we just, over the next 2-3 years, just went 10 miles deep, as you just mentioned. I mean, really knocking off regional and not small customers by any means, but regional customers within Southern California market, and really allowed us to focus and put what limited marketing dollars we had into the
Hmm.
region rather than being spread so thin across the country. And so right up until the pandemic, we really did not have much more of a footprint outside of Southern California. We had a couple regional customers in other spots. And then right around, call it the pandemic time, we've got national expansion with Kroger. We got national expansion with CVS. And from there, we started to actually build out a team. I was really just a sales team of one up until that point. My mindset when building the brand was always go get the business first and figure out how to support it afterwards, rather than
Right.
trying to hire into growth, which I think a lot of brands do. They'll go out and hire big teams, and what happens is I think often they fall on their face or somebody doesn't deliver, and you're stuck holding the bag with a big salary and having to constantly look at restructuring and reorging. Whereas we have always built this brand ahead of the headcount and then added the headcount to support afterwards, whether it's, and it begins more at the distribution side where you need to start supporting it, and at the store level where you have to support it. And so we really leverage brokers really early on with the brand, and we've gone through many evolutions or generations. I like to say we're like on generation 4 or 5 of our broker network. I
Right.
mean, we've worked with the large national brokers, we've worked with smaller regional brokers, we've worked with customer specific brokers, we've worked with channel specific brokers. And so it's finding that mix and those key relationships with those retailers, and kind of fitting it together like a puzzle, because there's lots of crossover, and getting people to play well together is also a difficult thing. But yeah, we've managed to do it with, like I said, limited resources, and have had a lot of success so far.
That's a great story. It's too often today companies are really chasing that viral growth. You've seen that with many brands in the market right now, and you took a different route. And I think that advice for other emerging brands today is very valuable.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I speak to so many founders now, and I mean, the expectation is like it's either all or nothing in the first year, and it just can't be that. I mean, there's very few
Right.
brands that have that virality, like your Ollipops and Popsies and Liquid Death. I mean, for every one of those brands, there's probably 1,000 other brands that are trying to mimic that, and it's just there's not enough air in the room for there to be that many brands that just moonshot overnight. And so the expectation really early on needs to be slow and steady growth, managing your resources, managing your dollars, and trying to really survive, because this business is expensive. It'll eat you alive if you end up wasting a lot of dollars early on.
Right. Makes sense. And I know when we've talked, you said that you run on a slim marketing budget. And the shelf is your marketing. Tell me about that philosophy. Explain that to, especially for people that are early on in building a brand.
So we built out I always like to say our packaging is what speaks to people. It is our billboard, kind of like you said, and at the
Mhm.
shelf. And I think most buying decisions by the consumers is made at the shelf. I don't see people driving down the highway seeing billboards, seeing a brand and saying, I need to go find that. Oftentimes
Right.
the brand is found within the store. And so when we positioned the brand really early on, we wanted the packaging to really communicate what was in the bottle. We wanted to make it simple, easy. We went with perfect hydration. I think it identifies us right out the gate as a hydration brand. And then the other big piece was is we knew we were getting into alkaline water, which was pH. And so we had to play on words with perfect hydration. And I mean, if we could have named it pH water, we would have, but we led with pH as kind of the big logo early on. And so when people knew that they wanted to go to the store, they were looking for an alkaline water. Packaging, our branding, everything really stood out on its own and allowed the consumers to find us. And I think when the consumer's looking for alkaline water, they know what they want and they get to the shelf, and then we pop off that shelf within that category. I think that's where the magic happens, and we're able to limit the amount of marketing dollars because we are grabbing the consumers at the shelf.
That's great. Tell me about the data that you're getting to measure success. Tell me about how you measure success with some people refer to it as the ROI in marketing. So, how do you measure that, and what does good look like?
I think it's truly, I mean, data through Circana or Nielsen or Spins is always really, really valuable for brands, but it's oftentimes really expensive and tough
Right.
to invest in. And so we've really honestly used our marker as velocity off shelf. I mean, if we are seeing velocity increasing, we know we're doing something right. If it doesn't seem to be hitting where we know it should be, we know that there's additional investments made, or possibly that the consumer is not shopping at that store. And so again, I think there's a fine line of wanting to grow fast before your consumers can actually know who you are. And so it's really incubating the brand correctly, um, at the retailers that you know you can find your consumer at. I mean, We've had to say no to a number of retailers early on because it just wasn't a fit at the time and place. I mean, there's certain channels where you don't want to get too far over your ski tips in order to grow the brand. The doors and the distribution could be really appetizing and look like it could really grow, but it could also kill your brand if you get too far out over your ski brand.
Well, that takes a lot of discipline and fortitude, if you will, to turn down business. Most people are throwing money to get more business rather than making sure that it's the right business for your brand and your
Yeah, I mean,
products.
you often see other founders, and we're just as guilty. I mean, we celebrate the wins right out the gate, but you really don't win until you're 3, 6 months, a year on shelf, and you've proven out. Oftentimes, when you get new distribution, it means you're going to be spending more money. And so, is
Yeah,
it worth the squeeze to get that distribution because you're going to have to support it?
exactly. Spending all those promotional dollars to get that shelf space, and is it sustainable in the long term?
Exactly. I mean, early on, I mean, marketing dollars don't necessarily need to go to billboards. They need to go back to the shelf. So
Right.
investing in price, investing in promotions, any marketing that you do that's outside the retailer needs to tie directly back. I know and we're guilty for trying to go do the viral marketing, and it most of the time it really doesn't pan out.
Hmm.
You might get good exposure, but ultimately is it driving people to the shelf? It's a tough measure. Marketing is a tough ROI measure in the
Yeah,
end.
good. Well, you've scaled a national brand with a lean team. What part does technology play in it, and how is Perfect Hydration leveraged it?
You know, I feel like we have always been behind the ball on the technology side. It's a very large investment typically, and just now are we starting to look at some of these new AI platforms that are coming out that
Hmm.
help on the operations side, or help with the marketing, or help with the data analytics, or with the promotional analytics. And so we're just now starting to look at some of those. We just signed on with Margin Wiz for deductions and promotional spend.
Okay.
It's a great new platform that allows you to really see your promotions and where your promotion dollars are going. It allows you to control some of your deductions and help dispute some of those. I mean, that's where we're seeing our dollars go a long way in regards to technology is our platforms that help you control your spend.
We've helped many companies in the food industry to manage their promotional dollars, to forecast it, as well as on the reconciliation side on the deductions, to
Yeah.
make sure that they have a process in place just to make sure people aren't taking more than what they're allocated for.
Yeah,
It could
it's
be a
amazing how much some of these customers might double dip on a promotion or something like that, and to be able to dispute it and find it, it's not easy going through a manual analysis of your trade spend.
Mhm.
That's something we've recently invested in. We're already finding ROI in. We're starting to look at some of the data analytics with that tie into Circana and Spins. Been approached by a number of operational platforms as well that help with manufacturing and scaling and ingredient sourcing and forecasting. So there is so much out there right now. It's a lot to swallow at times.
Absolutely. Well, and you mentioned AI. I mean, AI is a disruptor in the industry right now, across all industries, not just necessarily the CPG industry or beverage industry. So, how are you seeing it being used in the industry, specifically in the beverage industry, and how is Perfect Hydration using it or planning to use it?
You know, I think there's a fine line with using AI, and somebody I had a really good conversation with somebody the other day is also being a humanitarian and understanding that you
Hmm.
still need the people to help run the organization, and that can't just completely be run by AI. And so there's a fine balance of replacing people with AI or utilizing it. I think everybody needs to be utilizing it to be more efficient, more productive, and that's what I push within the company is I mean, why not run it through an email through ChatGPT and make sure that it reads well? And why
Right.
not have some of the analysis done? I mean, there's so many free opportunities with AI right now. So if you're not leveraging something that's associated with it, I don't think you're hitting your full potential or your own productivity. But again, there's a humanitarian side. That's the fine line that I'm trying to balance is not replacing people with AI.
Right, and that really kinda goes to the culture of the company.
Exactly.
How are you gonna leverage technology and balance it with the culture internally? Have you had
Absolutely.
discussions with you and your team about that? And
Absolutely.
kinda What advice can you offer?
Well, I mean, it's like you just said, it's the culture of the company. You take too many people out of it, that you don't have a culture, you don't have joy to work if you're not working with other people. And so
Mhm.
again, it's just it's training up people to use it, but again, not to replace anybody. It's all about productivity, I think.
Right. Well, I'll throw a question at you right here. So, if you had an AI bot that could dig into any part of your company overnight and come back with some good answers, where would you point it and and why? What would you hope it would find?
I think I'm very interested in the data analytics side of the
Mhm.
business. We have a category management team, but I think the ability that some of these platforms that I've seen to pull the data, create the story, and even develop the presentation on it is moving so fast right now. I think that's probably the next really hot spot for brands like ours to take advantage of. I think it'll speed up the ability to sell. It'll speed up the ability to react, to be able to adjust your business. I mean, again, going like we've now implemented something on the deductions and promotional side, but now doing the analytics on how to spend the money and whether we're spending it efficiently is a key part that I think that AI can really help us with.
We're actually seeing on the data analytics side using the voice, whether it's with Copilot or some of the other
Yeah.
AI tools to be interactive, not just put it up on a dashboard, but to be asking the questions, how did I do with customer A last quarter, year over year? And very interactive in answering getting answers to those questions.
I've seen a lot of cool ways to interact with AI too. Like I got presented by another company that does all email prompting, and so you can email the AI chatbot through your Outlook, and it responds to you like you're actually communicating with somebody on the other side of the email, rather than going into a web-based platform and having to go through setting it up. It's just already built into the data on the back end, and it's just more of an email conversation, which I thought
Mhm.
was really innovative and cool, and kind of takes out, I think, some of the potential fear of new technology. I mean, it's something that I think everybody is already doing. They're using their email and they're already asking for help through it. So I think it's just it was a cool feature that I saw the other day.
That's really neat. So, as you start looking across your business, are there other areas that you think you can automate that are manual at this point, or your team's feeling stretched?
I mean, on the operational side, I definitely think there's some cool platforms out there that can help with inventory and supply chain and purchasing and forecasting and tying it all together. I mean, we've
Hmm.
always been a very Excel driven company on that. And so the data is there, but now tying it all together, I think there's a huge opportunity for that. And again, helps reduce spend on ingredients and packaging, not over manufacturing, being long on product, warehousing, all of the above. Now I think will start to get tied together through some of these AI platforms.
Nice, nice. So, taking all this into account, are there any other areas that you want to share with the group, especially as you're continuing to grow your brand? And where do you see perfect hydration heading over the next 2 to 3 years?
In regards to perfect hydration over the next 2 to 3 years, I think you're going to see us innovate a bit more. And I think it's going to be smart innovation that fits in with the platform. I think you're going to see us move into new channels. I think there'll be a big press for us to go into C stores and convenience a bit more. I think the brand is incubated enough on the grocery side of the business, and we've had a lot of success with some mass and club retailers that I think it's really positioned us well to be successful on the convenience side. And then future channels like food service and restaurant and retail, I think will be another opportunity for us, and then potentially pushing internationally.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, very exciting.
It's nice to have that crystal ball kind of looking at the future, but it's also nice to have the magic wand to fix whatever you need to fix, whether it's on the operational side, providing better data, sales and marketing. If you had that magic wand, is there one area of the business that you'd want to improve?
Hmm. Um, I mean, I could always use more salespeople, honestly.
Okay.
Really, it's more part of just having more people in the stores, having more visibility of what's going on in the stores. I mean, sometimes
Hmm.
the data doesn't line up with what's actually going on at the shelf level, and to have eyes and ears in the stores, it would be a huge advantage for us. We have a fairly limited merchandising team, and I would love to be able to grow and scale that, because I think that's where you get incremental placements, you get incremental displays, and you just have the opportunity to push more cases through retail by having people in the stores.
Awesome. Well, Jared, this has been fantastic for brands trying to scale responsibly in today's environment. Your story is incredible and valuable to them. So, for our listeners that want to follow your journey or find perfect hydration, where and how is it best to connect with?
I think LinkedIn's become a huge platform. I
Hmm.
know it's something I've focused on for our brand and my personal brand as well. So I mean, feel free to reach out, follow. Always love to share tips and tricks there, and I think it's just a great place to network and support each other. Really.
Awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to cover or?
I mean, it's there's a lot of aspects where I think brands really struggle, and they don't understand what the investments are. I think
Yeah,
distribution's a huge part of it. Like, you get the retailer, but it's understanding the back end and getting it to shelf is a major part of growing the brand responsibly. I mean, early on, I think we thought, oh, let's go DSD. And
right.
when we started signing up DSD, all of a sudden it's like, holy cow, we need to hire two or three merchandisers as well to
Hmm.
help manage that distributor and make sure that they're still, because most distributors nowadays really don't want to do the selling for you. They just want to be able to, they want you to bring authorizations to them, and then they want to
Hmm.
fulfill it. And they don't, there's not much beyond that that they're willing to do at this point. I think a lot of distributors are over skewed and don't have enough resources themselves to grow their business. So they rely on the brands to bring them new business nowadays.
Right.
And so that is the fine line of overselling and getting too far over your ski tips, I keep saying, because it could bankrupt you having to have too many partners to support, especially on the distribution side. But then there's that other fine line of like working with some of these huge broadline wholesale distributors where it's, you don't see that you give them business, but it doesn't mean that the product's still making it to the shelf. So again, having eyes on shelf, making sure that the product is making it, and help managing the distributor to the
Right.
retailer after the sale. So that's where it goes back to. It's like, yeah, you celebrate when you get a new retailer, but you really don't know if you're successful until 6 months, 12 months in. And honestly, we've had accounts where we've had to pull back in because the distribution side could not support the business, and we've lost business for that. And so making sure you're supporting distribution beyond the retail is super important. I mean, the worst sale is an out of stock sale, because that means you're missing the sale
Absolutely.
altogether.
Absolutely. Have you ever had any problems with returns?
Because water has such a long shelf life,
Yeah.
it's kind of the last thing we worry about. We're very fortunate to have a 2-year shelf life, and so
Yeah.
more often times it might be more our mistake not managing inventory, and all of a sudden we get a call because and again, first in, first out, or last in, first out. Um, they sometimes warehouses make mistakes, and all of a sudden we find that we're shipping product with maybe 3 or 4 months on it. And because it's water, it's not top of mind. And so you might
Mhm.
get some returns there. But for the most part, like, we've never had any food safety issues. We've never had any like recall situations. So we've never really had to take back product then. We've had a few cases where the product, again, we thought maybe there was the right market, product did not move, we got discontinued potentially, and the distributor was stuck with some product, and yeah, we would always guarantee and take that product back. But
Mhm.
more often than not, we do a fairly good job of moving through inventory, managing it, and making sure that it's getting to the end consumer.
When you did distribution from the very beginning, I'm glad you brought that up because it was one of my questions I was thinking about is kind of where you start and where you end. Do you do shipping all the way to the store? How do you do that? So I'm glad you answered that question. But that whole distribution, especially if somebody's coming up with a new brand, new products to market, how far down the supply chain would you say that you need to carry your product?
So we look at distribution in kind of three different ways. We look at direct warehouse, so working directly with the retailer. Then there's a kind of a middleman layer where it's broadline wholesaler, call it the Unify, Cahey's, McLean's, Core-Marks of the world, where they
Right.
will purchase your product, warehouse it, move it to the retailer, but oftentimes just to the back room. And so it's up to either the retailer or your own, I call it merchandisers, to move that product
Mhm.
out of the back room to shelf. And then there's the third option, which is DSD, which is direct store delivery, which they manage it all the way through. But again, there's different pricing and markups through those. So coming from Campbell Soup, I was always taught direct warehouse was the best. It's the most affordable. You don't have middleman markups through distribution. You often get you get the best service levels from a direct retailer relationship. You get the most store deliveries, and oftentimes those direct warehouse orders, they might make it to the back room, but it's because the store level is making the orders. They know it's coming in, and they know to move it through to the shelf.
Right.
Broadline's a little bit. It's kind of that middleman. It's not as expensive as DSD, but you're still paying a small markup, and it needs to be kind of the handheld, kind of holding the hand of the distributors needs to take place a little bit more there. Hence,
Mhm.
you need people on the street to make sure that you're not out of stock and that you're moving product from the back room. Because let's face it, I mean, a distributor is happy to drop product in a back room, but that extra call it 50 to 100 feet to get to shelf is a lot of work. Because I mean,
Right.
you're now looking at multiple aisles, multiple sets, multiple locations. Are the tags up? So there's a lot of different components that you could fall off the shelf going through a distributor. And so that's where I wish we could have more feet on the street to manage the out of stocks and continuing to push product through the system. And then DSD, it's wonderful. You get product all the way to shelf, but it's very expensive. And
Right.
so your retails tend to elevate a bit more. It gets more expensive to promote, all of these things. So it's a fine balance of where you can go with the product and at what retail, because obviously retail determines velocity as well. And so if your retail's higher, your velocities are going to be slower. And so it's a balance again.
That's exciting. Thanks for sharing all that. That was very insightful. I used to work
Yeah, of
for
course.
Sara Lee back in the day and very familiar with DSD and had merchandisers on the Hanes side of the business and stocking the shelves and making sure that the promotions are up and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
it's very
It's
interesting business.
it's a whole part of the business that people don't really think about. But like you get a national Kroger authorization, and then it's like you think you got 3 to 6 months till you launch on shelf, but you're building that distribution behind the scenes for those
That's
months,
right.
making sure that everybody's aligned, making sure there's inventory, making sure the timing's correct, all of that. And so there's a lot of intricate work that goes behind the scenes to get the product to retail.
Well, that's awesome.
It's been a great journey to this point. I've learned so much about the business that, I mean, I thought I knew, but there's always new lessons to be learned.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, Jared. I appreciate the time today.